Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today's topic is story writing. Let's get started.
Students consider it an easy topic because it is something that we have already known from early childhood. Our grandparents have been telling stories for years for our spiritual or moral upbringing. So, this is not a new thing for all of us. What is story writing? A story is basically a narration or a prose fiction of real or imaginary events involving real or imaginary people. It has a fully developed theme, generally created to entertain or send a message across. Kinds of stories. Generally, we can divide stories into two very broad categories, that is, fiction and non fiction. Fiction stories. Fiction stories are made up or imaginary events. It includes fairy tales, fantasies, science fiction, adventures, and historical fictitious ventures, mythology, etc. Imagination is behind all fiction stories. Non-fiction stories. Non-fiction stories are real-life events or experiences. It includes news and current events, historical facts, biographies and autobiographies, crime and justice, culture and science history, memories and experiences, etc. Non-fiction stories reflect reality. Components of a good story. Here's a list of the components which are required for a good story. Title and moral, plot and characters, past tense and dialogues, descriptions using senses, 3 paragraphs, although it's not necessary, you can write a story in only a 1 paragraph as well. And then resolution and conclusion. Let's have a detailed look at all these components one by one. Title and moral. Title should be catchy enough to grab the attention of the readers. It should be a 2 or 3 worded phrase instead of a sentence. Moral. Moral of the story should be written separately at the end of the story. Do not write moral with the conclusion as a last sentence. Better to go for a traditional moral. Plot and character. Plot of the story is as important as breath for human beings, as it should be logical, following a proper sequential flow of events. If you try to fit any skipped incident at the end of the story that you have forgotten to mention in the beginning, it gives your story an absurd or bizarre look. So it should be properly worked on, where to adjust setting, characters, and details in the story. Good plot comprises rising action leading to its climax and then falling action towards its conclusion. This pictorial description may help you understand all 5 elements of the plot. Book is where you introduce setting and characters, grabbing the attention of the readers. Rising action. Rising action is the developing conflict or problem. Climax. Climax is where the conflict has reached to a do and die situation. Falling action. Falling action is where the hero comes to rescue or take a decision to have a suitable resolution of the plot. Characters. There are 5 types of characters: dynamic, round, flat, protagonist, antagonist, and stock characters. Dynamic characters are the characters that undergoes a change in the story. Round characters are developed, realistic, and complex with their strengths and weaknesses, unlike the flat characters, which are one-dimensional, that do not change throughout the story. Protagonist is the leading character or the hero of the story, the center of the plot. On the other hand, antagonist is the villain who actively opposes the hero. Stock characters are stereotypes added as fillers to the main plot. Use of adjectives are important to describe character traits of different characters in the story. Past tense and use of dialogues. We use past tense including all four kinds, but mainly focused past indefinite and past perfect tenses. Use of dialogues. Use of dialogues makes the story more natural and realistic, but dialogues should be short, not lengthy ones. Secondly, only a few dialogues are enough. Full stories should not be written like dialogue writing. Descriptions using senses. Develop a story using descriptions of senses, what we see, hear, touch, smell, and taste. Aside, deal with the answers of WH questions. When, why, how, what, etc. for a lofty impact of the story. Resolution and conclusion. Resolution and conclusion of the story must be satisfying. Readers may have such a feeling at the end of the story that good and bad characters are rewarded accordingly. It should be positive, shouldn't propagate any negativity leading towards a logical ending or solution of the conflict or the problem. If you want an open ending, then end it with a broad statement. Specimen story that we have selected is The Boy Who Cried Wolf. Let's read. Once upon a time there lived a shepherd boy who would take his flock of sheep for grazing grass by the hillside near his village every day. He sentence with a traditional beginning, once upon a time. Then there is the introduction of the main character and his profession, a shepherd boy. Then there is a setting as well in the very first line, the hillside near his village. The hill area was known to have a wolf in its woods, who was infamous for attacking the sheep grazing there. Villagers of that area, being aware of the wolf's menace, were always ready to anyone's aid who called out for help. The shepherd boy was well aware of this fact. One fine day, the shepherd boy was getting bored as he sat on the hillside, watching his sheep grazing grass. To amuse himself, he cried out, "Wolf, wolf, the wolf is raiding my sheep." Hearing this, vigilant villagers rushed the hills to help the boy. This is the rising action. The problem, the conflict here. Arrived, they found that there was no wolf nearby. Seeing the crowd, the boy had a hearty laugh at the sight of their angry faces. Annoyed at his act, the villagers, "Why have you unnecessarily called out for help when there is..." And now here is the log. The boy burst out laughing. They returned angrily. Time, the boy mischievously shouted again, "Wolf, wolf!" To his amusement, the villagers rushed up the hill again. They were naturally upset when he laughed at them for fooling them in a row. Later during the day, the shepherd top of his voice again. However, this time no one thinking that he was playing a prank on them this time too. Now this is the climax of the story. Evening, everyone wondered why the shepherd boy hadn't returned. Sheep. They went up the hill to find him. Now this is the following action. To their dismay, they They asked, "What happened?" The shepherd boy replied while sobbing that the wolf had come and scattered his flock of. He cried out for help, but nobody turned up to help him drive the lewd wolf away. The villagers told him that he himself was responsible for what had happened to him. The conclusion is logical and satisfying at the same time, as the shepherd boy had got what he deserved. Once a lawyer, always a lawyer. And the second one? No one believes a lawyer even when the latter is speaking the truth. The tips that we have discussed in this lecture help you a story, though practice is a must. That's all for this week. Allah Hafiz.